From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Nick Barris here. It's MorningLine. It's Monday, and I do hope you had a good weekend. Coming to you live here from at News Channel 5. Got a good show on tap for you this morning, and invite you to join in the conversation. We'll get the phone lines up, and I know some of you have got to have some strong opinions on this, and we're going to be talking about this up through the election. Has what I term as one of the more unusual and provocative campaigns, presidential campaigns that I can remember, continues to steamroll on. And, I think we have to admit that the focus is going to be Donald Trump and what's been happening there, but also with a big primary again tomorrow that really could form some separation, not just on the Republican side, but what's happening with the Democrats as well. We're going to talk about that, where we stand right now, and I want to get your take on some of these issues. The number, we'll put it up on the screen, 737-7587. Like I said, we're going to be doing this a lot, but there's always a new development. And the latest, looking at some of the violence at some of these rallies, who's responsible, how it's going to shake out, and how it's affecting the various candidates. With us to talk about it, straight from Vanderbilt, is Professor Thomas Schwartz. Good morning to you, sir. Am I right or wrong? How unusual is this campaign in your minds compared, and let's remember, sometimes our memories are short. There have been some brutal kind of, really heavy attacking campaigns in the past, but does this one separate itself in your mind to some degree?
Yes, I think the one comparison that comes to mind, of course, is the 1968 campaign when the country was bogged down in war in Southeast Asia, when there was a great deal of social divisions, racial divisions, and you did have violence at rallies. You had an attempt, oftentimes, George Wallace, who was running at the times, his rallies were sometimes disrupted by protesters, and there were incidents there. Hubert Humphrey went during the general election campaign, often was shouted down by protesters. And so the one specific historical analogy that I can come back to is 1968. I'm not sure that the other social conditions are the same, but certainly that's the one that comes to mind.
With that in mind, and that's kind of what I wanted to focus on just at the start here, and that's where I want to hear what some of the viewers think as well. Did the candidates back in 68, in the minds of some, you see Donald Trump almost provoking some of this? Did they kind of foster it to some degree?
Well, George Wallace certainly did.
I mean, did he come right out and say, yeah, I want to punch that guy in the face?
He didn't say that, but what he did say is that if any protester lies down in front of my car, that's going to be the last car they're going to lie down in front of.
Okay, so it's been done before.
It's been done before, and it was a very provocative thing at the time. It fed into Wallace's tough guy image. It fed into the sense that he was appealing to the anger of many Americans at the changes that had been taking place in the 60s, especially the civil rights laws and the racial riots of the time. So Wallace was playing the white backlash then, and to a certain extent, I think this weekend gives some indication that Trump is playing the white backlash in a different way.
How calculated do you think this was by Donald Trump? Because clearly, I mean, he decided to tap in on something that's working. I mean, and here you see some of the crowd here. We're watching some video, by the way, here, Professor, on screen of a moment where a protester tried to make his way up onto one of the podiums there. You can see Donald Trump turning around, ready to defend himself. Good security in place there. And then there was another rally that had to be, canceled in Chicago because of fears over protests and all of this. But it doesn't seem to be hurting him, at least among what I seem to be his very core, strong supporters.
That's correct. I mean, it won't hurt him among his core supporters. What it will do is damage his prospects in the general election
I don't
campaign.
see his support necessarily growing. I think the people that are voting for him tomorrow in Florida and tomorrow in Illinois were there all along. I don't know that a bunch of others are flocking to him at this point, right?
No, I think what's going to happen, what'll be interesting is whether, in effect, because of the lead he's managed to accumulate and the position he's in now, that he'll be able to win the nomination with between 35 to 40% of the Republican vote because the others have not unified against him. So he may still be able to win. Whether I have serious doubts about whether that could translate into a win in the general election.
So, in your mind, what is the demographic of the Trump supporter in general? I know he's got a range, but the core is what? Is it old white men?
Well, it could be old or white men, or in effect, one of the key determinants seems to be whether you've gone to college or not, high school education as opposed to college education, so that your skills are less in the sense of being able to compete in this economy. And the belief, for example, that Trump appeals particularly to people who are opposed to trade agreements, because those have often more affected blue-collar workers and those with less education as jobs have been outsourced or moved abroad. So to that extent, there's a class component, there's an education component, there's some racial component as well, and I think that combination, along with what might be called a sort of celebrity component. The fact that Donald Trump is a very familiar face to millions of Americans from being on network TV for years, and that's an unknown factor that probably translates a little differently than, say, as George Wallace or other candidates who tapped into the same sort of class-based anger.
So going into tomorrow, let's look first at the Republican Party and how it plays out. Tomorrow's make or break for Marco Rubio, is it not? I think it's pretty much clear. If he doesn't win Florida, and I think he's even acknowledged as much, he's going to drop out.
He hasn't. Yesterday he was being careful about that, but I think that the reality is that he would not have a viable candidacy without winning his home state. The same would go for John Kasich, although the polls show him in a better position to win in Ohio.
Okay, so potentially tomorrow, if Trump were to win all of that,
it would be over.
Yeah, it'd be over. Now, we think there's a possibility then of how much is Rubio trailing in Trump? I don't know if I saw that this morning in Florida.
It varied in the polls, but the latest ones had him down by almost 20%.
Yeah,
so that's very difficult.
Struggling for him there. And then closer in Ohio, right?
In Ohio, Kasich actually is ahead in several polls, so that Kasich actually looks more promising to defeat Trump in Ohio than Rubio certainly does in Florida.
Okay, and we're going to get to the Democrat side as well. Let's see, take a phone call real quick. We'll go to Ross. Ross, before we go to the first break, we'll jump in with you. What you got, Ross?
Hey, Nick. How you doing this morning?
Good morning. What's on your mind?
Oh, same old stuff. I didn't catch exactly all you're saying about what's going on with Trump and the disruptors.
Yeah.
But what I have noticed on CNN, Fox, and everybody else, who are only trying to sell airtime. I mean, realistically, that's all they're trying to do. They'll say, for instance, in their bylines that violence erupts at another Trump, get-together. And what they'll do is show over and over and over again one guy throwing a punch, a couple people in a shoving match, and that's all they've got. And they've got to show it over and over and over again. And they've got to broadcast it like it was the Baltimore riots after Freddie Gray stabs or whoever that guy was.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are just doing nothing more than trying to gin up interest in their TV show. I mean, realistically, if these people that do come can cause problems, if any one of us had to deal with them one-on-one, it would be hard for all of us not to want to throw a punch. Now, I'm not justifying any violence or anything like that, but what has taken place has been not worth reporting, not worth the airtime, and they are just trying to make Trump look bad. I'm not saying he's the ideal candidate. He's not what we definitely want in office. But sadly, in my opinion, he ain't a politician, which makes him the better choice among what we've got.
I know.
Thanks for your time, Nick.
Thanks for your call. I think a lot of people see it that way. Now, I'll differ with him on this point, and you can weigh in on that. He's right in terms of the events. There have been some. I mean, there's that highly publicized one we've seen over and over again where you see the individual walking up the stairs. I don't know what kind of gestures he was making, and the guy coming and clearly cold cocking him, and Trump now saying that he's going to look into maybe paying that guy's legal bills. That, and that was not good. And then you have some other ones where there have been some scuffles, and we do see the same thing. Maybe there's been 3, 4, 5 of those types of incidents, some with journalists being roughed up. Now, I will say this. The reason I believe, Ross, it maybe is a little more newsworthy, and you're not wrong when you say that Trump means ratings, and all these programs, I think, kind of go that route because people like to follow it. He's quite a show to watch. But I would think what ties in for me is that Trump has made some stronger comments that could be, construed to, egg some of this on. Well, if anyone throws anything, you take them out, or I'd like to punch them in the face. I think that's newsworthy, and the media is going to follow this wherever it happens, and it's really only happened at a Donald Trump rally. Have there been any reports of violence at any of the other candidates' rallies?
No, and I think this is.
And we would cover that too. Believe me, we'd be all over that.
This is one of those cases where Trump lives and dies by the media exposure. After all, how has he gotten so much attention?
Yeah.
Because his rallies are exciting, and also there is a sort of tinge of violence. So in a way, he's played this
as well. It's a spectacle.
Yep.
It's a spectacle.
And it has given him enormous attention and allowed him to have amounts of free media time that any candidate would die for.
Yeah, so I can say this, Ross. You know, if your observation was that maybe it's being unfair, I'm telling you right now, Trump and his people love it. They love it. It's worked, and it continues to work. And whether you support him or don't support him, it is a spectacle to watch, either when he's talking afterwards or any of these debates.
Right.
You're watching it. For some people, it may be because, gosh, I love what I'm hearing, and other people are watching because you like wating a train wreck.
Right. Politics is entertainment.
Yeah,
I mean, it is in a way.
But I mean, I've enjoyed watching these debates more than any other Republican debate I've ever watched.
Right.
I just have. Right. All right, we'll take a break on that note. The number 737-7587. We'll get into more of this with the professor. We'll touch on what's happening with the Democrat side as well. If you want to sound off, doesn't have to be just about Donald Trump this morning, but that's the latest development over the weekend with the canceled rally and what his reaction is so far to some of the violence on the campaign trail and how things shape up for tomorrow. Join us. We'll be back with more right after this.